I have a question that relates to how they got to America.
Oh, go, yeah,
So
yeah,
hold on,
yeah, yeah.
if you can keep a pin in that. Okay, so I was listening to an interview with Paul Anka recently, and he mentioned how he helped start the British invasion coming to America, because he said he was living in Europe at that time and like learning different languages and singing in those different languages, and he watched the Beatles play, and he's like, these guys are amazing. And so he went to his agent, who was Norman Weiss at General Artists at the time, and he goes, "You have to sign these guys. They've got like in a suit and tie. They've got long hair. They sound amazing." Like, and Paul Anka was like the guy at that time.
Big star.
And so Norman Weiss flew to go see the Beatles, and then he's the one that signed them and then brought them to America. And so I was wondering, like, from that moment, like, have you heard that story before from Paul Anka? Because he's been telling it for years.
He's
I
been
think.
telling it for years, and yeah, I'll try and be.
Oh yeah, is this controversial?
Be as diplomatic as possible. That may have had a little something to do with it,
Okay.
but not a lot to do with it.
Okay.
How it actually happened was by sort of October '63, the Beatles were the biggest band in the UK. They'd had #1 albums, and they went off for the first overseas tour to Sweden. When they came back to Heathrow Airport in London, loads of fans were there to welcome them back, all the screaming and stuff. Walking through the airport at the same time was Ed Sullivan. And he says, "What the hell's all that? Who are they all here for?" And he said, "They're the Beatles. They're the biggest thing over here." And thinks, okay, make a note, I'll have to find out more about them. Then there's CBS News does a little feature on Beatlemania, and that is on the telly on the morning of the 22nd of November 1963.
Okay.
It's due then to be shown again at tea time, but a little incident like the assassination of JFK happens in the afternoon of that day, so it's not repeated.
Yeah.
So of course there's chaos in America then with everything that happened with the assassination. So they do then pop up a little bit later on CBS News. Then there's the Jack Parr show. He does a feature on Beatlemania, and actually plays a little bit of the Beatles performing, which he shouldn't have done. He didn't actually have the license to do that, but he did it anyway.
Huh.
So that then gets the Beatles' name out there more. Then I Want to Hold Your Hand comes out as a single. Now the American arm of EMI, who owned the Beatles, hadn't put really any effort into marketing them in the States.
Okay.
So they have the first couple of singles come out on individual labels, one called Swan, another called VJ. So they're not really interested. But then I Want to Hold Your Hand comes out, and it catches on. Roll across the US, everybody's playing this song. So then Capitol think, oh, hang on, this is going to catch on, maybe we should do something. Then they rush out the promo for I Want to Hold Your Hand around Christmas time, and suddenly that starts going up. So they get the TV appearances, they've got the record now heading towards the top of the charts, and then the week before they're due to fly out there, they're the main feature in the Time magazine.
Okay.
Big feature on Beatlemania. So it was a gradual thing of all these little bits and bobs coming on. The first guy really to take a punt on them was Sid Bernstein. Now he was a New York promoter who always read the British newspapers. So he was reading the Manchester Guardian and reading about these Beatles. So he tracked Brian Epstein down and rang him here. He said, I'm interested in bringing the Beatles to Carnegie Hall in New York.
Okay.
So Sid's the first guy who's sort of making that tentative booking, with hopefully doing, and then that's where everything starts to come together, leading up to doing the Ed Sullivan show. So then,
right. And so at what point is Norman Weiss in the mix there to sign the general artist?
So
like from the is it after the Ed Sullivan
so
show?
it's around
or?
that same time. So Brian is then looking at his contacts over there, and that's when he comes across Weiss, and they then make this partnership. and he becomes like.
So if Anka said something, if he influenced it, it was probably he sped it up by a couple weeks.
Yeah, so
it
it would help that what Paul Anka was doing was really giving that information to Nat Weiss and say, look, this is who they are. You've got to find out more.
Right.
So by the time Brian's bringing them over and Sid Bernstein's doing his Carnegie thing, he wants to be involved, and he becomes like their American tour manager and really close with them. So there's lots and lots of people involved. It wasn't just a one-off thing. You needed the little sequence of events all to happen. And as with everything in Beatles history, everything happens at the right time.
Yeah,
and
sounds like it.
It's just, I often joke and say, if you try to write this story as a work of fiction, nobody would believe it. Said, oh, that's never going to happen. That's too ridiculous.
Yeah.